We had 699 positives.
Declare this a global health emergency.
It was challenging.
Literally every day we learn a little bit more about it.
So we're watching this like a hawk.
I think it sucks.
We have lost nearly 12,000.
It is very weird.
To remain at least 6 feet apart.
It's an evolving situation.
And it kind of stinks not to be able to see them.
This is not forever. We're going to get through this.
I know it was definitely difficult for everyone.
Masking, social distancing, testing.
It's been tough.
COVID-19.
COVID-19.
Good afternoon, parents and staff members. This is Renee Rostar, Superintendent of the Montville Township Public School. The threat posed by COVID-19 presents substantial concerns for all of us and our families. In order to promote social distancing, a decision has been made to close the Montville Township schools from Tuesday, March 17th through Friday, March 27th.
Hi, my name is Ben Sherman.
And I'm Alyssa Neff.
We come to you from Montville Township High School, not only as co-presidents of MTTV,
but as high school students in the years of 2020 and 2021.
As upperclassmen students at MTHS, we have first-handedly experienced the entire Montville community's physical and mental acclimation to COVID-19 in its entirety.
Montville has been on a long and tough ride, but has been able to overcome so much and grow throughout it. The purpose of this documentary is to highlight the hard work and perseverance from every individual faced with obstacles due to COVID.
We would like to thank the administration, teachers, staff, and students for helping us put this documentary together.
So without further ado, MTTV proudly presents
Life Goes On, how Montville Township High School is adapting to a global pandemic.
A person's 4 years of high school is something that can be a huge influence on the rest of their life. It is a period in everyone's life where they make the choices that seemingly determine their future. The landmark events of high school are almost a rite of passage, and COVID-19 has done nothing but rob us of those. In the midst of this global pandemic, however, Montville Township High School has found various effective ways to bring back the high school experience to students bereft of it, all the while keeping everyone safe.
As COVID-19 became part of the national conscience, the reality of a temporary school closure at MTHS became more and more imminent. Soon it became reality and was subsequently extended multiple times.
The term normal life took on a very different meaning. Many of us didn't leave home for weeks at a time and went several months without seeing our closest friends and family.
I think the hardest part is honestly just not being able to see my family and friends normally. I mean, definitely like FaceTiming and texting and stuff keeps us in touch, but it's so much harder to just not do things normally, and I miss like normal social interaction.
The whole thing happened like on March 13th, and then the 2-week break got announced. Like everyone was like, no school, like thank God, like whatever. But then like it went on, and everyone was like, oh my God, like I miss school and like I want to be there. And like you don't realize that how many things you're missing out on, even if it's like the smallest thing.
The pandemic has affected everyone, I think, in a personal way, whether you know people who've been, sick or just in general, people losing jobs and things like that. But I just think that if you had told me a year ago that I'd be doing my senior year online, I think I would have laughed and I would have just been like, yeah, no way, like that, we can get away from that. And I think everyone, when we left back in March, we were like, I'll see you in 2 weeks, like have a nice vacation. And I just think that it kind of spiraled into something that we couldn't have ever imagined. And I think that goes for everyone too.
In sports, they don't high five or shake hands anymore, which is weird. Wiping down the equipment we use in gym because we would have never done that before. Also not eating in school because a lot of teachers would let us do that during class.
The littlest things that we used to do before, like they're probably like, you just wouldn't expect that at all.
I know a current sophomore this year who said the other day, he's like, I never thought I would be excited to go to school. He's like, but I will never, ever complain about going to school ever again.
Before in school, how we'd always be like, I hate school, like, I don't want to be here. I've like gained a better appreciation for it.
It's just so different, like seeing how we're living life now. I can't believe how we used to live it. Like
There were definitely a few moments over the last couple of months that have been a bit strange to me. The first was where I actually responded as an EMT to a few COVID calls, and looking at myself dressed up in full head to toe, like we call it a bunny suit, where it's like footy pajamas with a hood and mask and a face shield and glasses. That was like being taped into the gloves. It was comical because you're like, what on earth am I wearing? I look like I'm gonna go on the moon or something.
Even towards the beginning of this, I think I walked into like Michael's at some point and I like forgot my mask and I was like, why are people staring at me? Why am I staring at these people? And they look all weird because it was like just happening and I was even confused.
I find myself like if I'm watching TV and there's shows when people without masks, sometimes I'm like caught off guard, like, wow, to go into a store without a mask is normal a few months ago.
My grandpa, we call him Peepa, he is the most like friendly, hugging everyone person I've ever met. And to see him like standing and not be able to hug people, I just think that is just crazy. Like I would never have thought a year ago that my grandpa would not be going up to random people and saying hi and talking to them.
I walked into the bank just to go to the ATM with a hoodie and a mask and sunglasses on. And I only realized it was weird when I like caught a glimpse of myself walking in the glass. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I would be arrested if I tried this like 6 months ago. It would be terrifying if I worked at the bank.
Before COVID, obviously, social gatherings are like very common. Like I would, go to parties or go out to eat with my friends, and especially seeing how restaurants are pretty much like deserted and bare and no one's there. It's I would be really confused because like who doesn't want to get food with like the people they want to be around and the people they want to spend time with,
The class of 2020 dealt with huge blows, with events like prom and graduation having to be heavily modified or canceled altogether. Graduation was one of the biggest events debated amongst the Montville community, but everyone had the same goal, and that was to give the class of 2020 a proper goodbye. The event was held as a drive-through, where the class was divided up into 5 waves with individual time slots. Students' cars were decorated and paraded through the town before arriving at the high school, where the graduate was able to step out of the car as their name was called, walk across the stage, and pick up their high school diploma.
Congratulations, Christopher Arena.
Later that evening, a virtual graduation video was aired for the class to recognize the students once again and allow for graduation speeches. Additionally, a limited in-person ceremony occurred on the football field in July. This ceremony was very different, however, as the stands were empty and the graduates were seated at least 6 feet apart from each other.
A lot of people were like under the impression that it wasn't as good compared to other schools, but they really did put a lot of hard work into it and like giving us even like 3 graduations. Like not a lot of schools got that opportunity or even just a graduation, so.
Cancellations also hit every spring sports team at MTHS, another huge blow to the class of 2020, who had worked for years to get to that point.
The senior prom was held unconventionally after graduation as opposed to before, and was renamed to a gala. There wasn't as many people as there would have been in normal conditions, and if students wanted to go inside, they had to wear a mask.
Food was served on trays, and all the workers, of course, wore masks. Despite the hot weather, the event was beautifully organized and enjoyed by all.
The months of June and July also saw the school administration working in conjunction with many different members of the school community to figure out the safest way to return to in-person instruction. Parents, teachers, students, and various others were represented and asked to give their input on how best to bring our school back.
I think one of the most difficult aspects of reopening school was that the state of New Jersey gave us guidelines in their road back, and there were 10 different aspects that the school district needed to address in preparing our plan. And that, had to do with all the operational aspects of the school. And I think from that standpoint, some of the things that we struggled the most with were finding ways to socially distance students within schools. We struggled, but really couldn't come up with a way to have all of the students at the middle and high school in together every day. And I know the high school committee was very active. They met a lot, frequently, if not daily, working through various different models for the high school schedule. And they settled on what they thought was the best model for them.
So relying on the collective intelligence of, and experience of the staff as a whole, which is 160 some odd people, that gives us a real in-depth critical view of all the nooks and crannies at the school and allows us to make better informed, educated decisions about adjustments we need to make.
I had the pleasure of serving on the committee this summer with a whole bunch of faculty members, administrators. It was awesome. Even some parents about how do we reopen schools safely?
The greatest challenge is trying to take action that's in the best interest of everyone.
Principal Douglas Stanford was in charge of trying to figure out how many different aspects of the school day would work for students choosing to be in the building.
A huge obstacle was trying to make the 2020-2021 school year better, stronger, more academically focused, more focused on having an athletic program than it was in the end of the preceding year. So we had to provide a tremendous amount of staff training in order to create a more productive classroom environment for students. When we had time to reflect, analyze, and build upon, the lessons learned from the preceding school year, we had to think about distance that people would have from each other. We had to think about the number of people in each location at any given time. A high school is particularly challenging when you think about the number of students in a classroom in a hybrid model, because even when we split the alphabet in half and have half the students come on Monday and Tuesday and the other half come on Thursday and Friday, what you're still faced with is a high school schedule where the deck gets reshuffled every period over the course of the 8 periods. Think about your schedule and how your English class is very grade level specific. So that's a very predictable class. Well, think about your fine arts class if you have one, or maybe your world language class. You start to see more of a mixture of the grades, and that's where it got particularly difficult. So what we did was while we split the alphabet in half, we also literally had to look at every single section and look at it twice. We had to look at the Monday, Tuesday version of it, the Thursday, Friday version of it, and try to make sure we weren't overloading any one of those classes on either one of those, the beginning of the week or the end of the week. We handpicked a few sections where it seemed like it was going to be a little too large, moved the students around, but even that was challenging because moving one student here has a ripple effect over in a different class. So it took many, many man hours just to look at how many students were going to be in a room.
A lot of students are trying to get back in here, but I think some students are also frustrated that it's not like the regular school that they remember.
One of the most impactful changes was the introduction of one-way halls and stairways. This made some normally easy routes from class to class way more complex, making typically shorter walks into one's halfway or more around the building.
You have passing time. We designed one-way hallways to minimize the amount of face-to-face interaction, keep everybody moving in the same traffic pattern so that you reduce the potential for close contact. You reduce the amount of time students would be within 6 feet of each other, knowing that 15 minutes is considered close contact.
Changes also included a shortened school day, which only ran for 4.5 hours as opposed to the normal 6 hours and 45 minutes.
In quarantine last year, teachers had so much trouble putting on cameras, and not everyone would show up to class, but they've definitely worked hard on that, and now you have to do these things, so it kind of makes it feel a little bit normal, and you're actually in class and on a schedule, so I kind of maintain my time a little bit more, I think.
Last year, I would just log on to my conferences and I would sleep through the classes, but now you're actually forced to get it together and get up, turn your camera on, show your face, and actually be working. I feel like it's gotten better and it's more put together.
I think the biggest improvement in the virtual system since last spring is the class schedule that they're running now. I think it makes it more manageable for students not having the class like all week, every day. So
Screen fatigue is a real thing. And I think for students' mental health, I think, having an abbreviated day is something that I will continue to support because I think it makes a difference.
The high school is sanitized regularly, and tons of protocols were put in place to maximize social distancing as best they could.
First and foremost, we want to make sure everybody's healthy and safe. We don't want to force a situation that compromises the health and safety of our school community, both our staff and our students and our parents. We really had to think through, talk through, bring different people in. We also had to think about sanitizing the building. So fortunately, we welcomed a new custodial company, Aramark, who has a great track record throughout the region. And what came along with them was one of their best general managers. Many people don't know him. They might not even have seen him in the hallways, but the manager of Aramark, Damian Smith, is absolutely spectacular in overseeing the Aramark crew, many of which are the same people who worked for a previous custodial company. However, they received new training, additional training, in order to make sure that they were effectively cleaning during the day and also disinfecting and sanitizing at night, every single night. Our maintenance department, headed by Mr. Steve Toth, he was absolutely fantastic too. They installed hand sanitized dispensers throughout the building, pretty much every 50 feet in the hallway and inside every classroom door. Mrs. Tammy Coop has been incredibly helpful. She is our transportation manager because we had to think about health and safety on the buses. So how do we manage these routes? How do we get people on the bus, off the bus? How do the buses get sanitized?
We were assigning seats to students on buses so that we could keep them socially distanced. So there were a lot of logistical and facility things that we had to take care of, and things that you typically wouldn't have to deal with in a normal school year. So that kind of made it a little bit challenging.
I think the school has done enough to protect the students and school community because everyone wears masks, everyone stays pretty distant.
I feel like, especially with social distancing and wearing masks, like I'm safe. So, and especially with like the one-way hallways, and I think the protocols they put in have helped keep the COVID numbers down.
I'm an EMT, and I can honestly say, and I'm reading research and all the rest of it, I can honestly say I cannot think of a single policy that we can be doing differently or better that would increase the safety of students and faculty, especially if they follow the rules that we currently have in place. And I will say I'm incredibly proud and impressed with how well all of the students and all of the teachers are following the guidelines. I don't think, and I say this hand on heart, I don't think I've ever seen a student disobeying the rules, whether it's keeping their mask on when they're close to people or just in class in general, walking the right direction in the hallways. I think everybody is doing a spectacular job, and I think the teachers are doing a great job of enforcing those rules.
Right off the bat, our student population has been spectacular. They really have. I can count on one hand literally the amount of instances where students have been non-compliant with health and safety standards. And it was early on. I think it was more accidental than it was deliberate.
One of the most physically notable differences between this school year and school years past is the wearing of masks and face coverings everywhere in the community.
Masks in school were a lot more annoying when it was hot in September because we would get really hot in school and sweaty under the mask. But it's definitely something we've all gotten used to, I think.
Like also it's the aspect that like you're not able to breathe as well, so that's kind of annoying too, but I'm getting used to it.
It's funny, the face masks obviously are a great way to keep us all healthy and safe and definitely needed. But it also made us rethink something that we took for granted, which is our entire face and how expressive we can be. You look at someone and all you see is this, right? You can't tell if someone's happy or sad or joking or sarcastic or any of that stuff. I mean, you could tell a little bit, but so much of our expression has been kind of hidden. So I don't think the level of comfort is really an issue for a lot of us. I think it's just, we can't read body language the way we used to. So we have to get used to a whole new set of things.
I hate the face mask personally. I could never tell what someone's really thinking or how they're feeling because I don't even know if they're smiling. I can't really tell. So communication wise, it's been tough to be able to really have a full conversation with someone with the mask covering half your face.
It's definitely like so much harder to hear my teachers like in Spanish class. It's kind of hard to understand as it is, and sometimes when I don't hear things as clearly, it definitely makes that so much more difficult.
Communicating with teachers has become a little bit tougher in that sometimes when discussing stuff with teachers, we do have emotions. We might be angry about something, we might be excited about something, we might be confused about something, and that's kind of lost with half of our face covered. Same thing with students. When you're confused, it's really, really hard now for teachers to tell because you're sitting in front of us and that's all we're seeing. So it's definitely affected communication, but I think that, again, everybody's kind of come up with really creative ways to try and get around.
It's hard to communicate, like sarcasm, because when you're being sarcastic, your face kind of smiles just a little bit, and it kind of comes across harsh when you can't see that smile. So I've really had to make sure I temper some of that kind of stuff. But for the most part, face masks haven't been the biggest issue.
I think it's helped people learn how to enunciate a little bit better, because sometimes it can be a little challenging to understand people. I think over time people have just become more accustomed to it. I think it's something that over time we're getting more used to, and I think people actually see the value of it, so they're a little bit more willing to put up with the inconvenience of it.
This school year, COVID arguably hit 3 classes the hardest. For the new freshman class of 2024, the start of the high school experience was much different than any class that had ever preceded them. They did not get to experience the parts of high school that most of us have taken for granted, such as the social lunch period, homecoming dance, and pep rally.
Going to high school, I was so excited for having like a normal spirit week and homecoming and the pep rally. And just like having like a student section and being that student section in sports games, it's just something that we can experience, and I really would have liked to enjoy that during my freshman year, and sadly that can't happen.
The class of 2021 senior year, for some, will be spent entirely behind a computer screen, far from the vision many had in mind just last year. They are suffering the loss of many lasts in terms of senior and school events, sports, and other extracurricular activities.
I think the hardest part about this has just been missing out on all the things that I look forward to, like going into senior year. Like, this is the year I'm supposed to be hanging out with all my friends a lot and my family and all that, and it's just been hard not being able to do those things as much. But I think we're just trying to make the best of a hard situation, and I just hope things get better towards the end of the year so we can have some of those more like fun things as a senior class.
The hardest part for me personally is accepting the fact that our senior year is pretty much like half gone.
This is something that everyone's going to remember, at least especially for us. And as seniors, I think it's something that we need to see as a greater issue. Obviously, we can't be in school for our senior year, but it's something that the entire world is going through. And I think that's more important than, going to school every single day.
I really miss seeing my friends, eating lunch with them, having class with them. I think being online is just so different, and it really sucks that my senior year is going to be spent like this, but hopefully by the spring, things will be different.
Yeah, unfortunately, due to the shutdown, some of our events have been pushed back, like the senior banquet and even potentially later in the year, the senior breakfast, just dates might change.
The main event that we're hoping and we're really praying on happening this year is obviously the senior prom at Legacy Castle, because that's something we've been working towards pretty much all 4 years of high school, and we've really done everything we could for prom at least and our senior year. So I mean, if all these events get canceled, I mean, we can't do anything obviously because the situation and lives are at risk, but it would definitely be a shame and a sore thumb. I'm really hopeful. I'm still hopeful. I'm hoping that things get better. Right now it doesn't look like that, but fingers crossed.
On top of that, the previously affected class of 2020 is entering into a very different and restricted college environment. Again, a far cry from what many had in mind as they first started the application process.
We're supposed to have single dorms in spring semester, so I'm not allowed to live with my roommate. Or we wouldn't be able to have any guests, or I wouldn't be able to go into other people's dorm rooms. And there would be also a certain amount of RAs supposedly on per floor, and you would get penalized or kicked off of campus if you break any of the rules. So it's honestly more strict. There would be mostly classes online and not in person. I really didn't get an actual college experience, so to speak. So having easy access to make new friends, or actually being in person, or not having the experience to live on my own, to take on responsibilities. Also just not having the experience to start a new chapter in my life.
Additionally, for the class of 2022, the college application process got a little more complicated.
They know that you haven't been able to get to campus and do a campus tour or an information session or an open house because they're not offering those opportunities, but there are still opportunities to get in touch with colleges, to do some research on colleges and really, make educated decisions about your college application process. We have virtual school visits this year. There are virtual tours.
So I think the biggest obstacle for applying to college in the pandemic has been not being able to see colleges and go on campus tours and things like that, just because I'm super indecisive. So I like to go and kind of get a sense for the school and the vibe of the students. So not being able to see the schools has been really annoying. I mean, they're doing online campus tours, but it's not really the same because you don't get to see how the school spirit is, or if the students like the school or how they interact with each other.
Testing is probably the second biggest thing impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. SATs and ACTs have been really chaotic. Students were registered for tests in the spring. Those tests didn't happen, or they were rescheduled because everyone was kind of thinking that this wasn't going to last that long. And, a lot of people were registered for the March SAT that got rescheduled to May and didn't think anything of it. Fast forward to the fall, you still have students who have not been able to test, who are still getting their tests canceled because the test center has closed. It's basically impossible to register for an SAT because everyone's trying to register for the August, September, October SAT, ACT. And it's really hard to get a test date or find a test center that's, not 4 hours away. But we're in a really unique time where the colleges have really acknowledged, maybe these tests aren't something we can consider this year. The colleges have acknowledged by making everything really become test optional. For the most part, almost every school is test optional.
For those students who chose the hybrid format, they began coming into the building in the middle of September. Immediately, they had to adapt to all the changes that had taken effect to keep them safe.
On top of having to navigate one-way hallways and many other physical and logistical challenges, the challenge of trying to master both in-person and at-home learning styles proved to be a struggle for some as well.
It's harder for us as counselors because typically, a normal school day, students are coming in during their study hall, students are popping down during lunch, students are coming before and after school. Obviously, that's not really happening right now. And I think it's harder on the students because you don't have that option to pop down and say, Ms. Murat, I have a really quick question. You have to go and email me if you're not in the building or meeting virtually.
Shooting a text, shooting an email, but you can't get that instant response. You can't see that person's facial expressions. You don't know exactly what they're feeling. And I miss having that.
Yeah, I think also we had a meeting over something that could have been said, in the hallway, or if I had seen Lizzie in class before the bell rang, I would have been like, oh, blah, 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 blah. But no, I had to shoot, her an email and then a text, and then I had to send that to someone else. And it's just like an elongated process or something that could have happened in 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I think I have noticed that is a little different is that a lot of the students just seem more reserved than I thought they would be. I mean, some of this could just be, school and being at school at 7:15 in the morning. But I think the other part of it has to do with the difficulty in reading people and seeing their body language, not being able to, hang out with our friends as much as we can. And it's all just a little more tiring than we think it is. I mean, as wonderful as this is, and it is, trying to communicate with people over the internet, it's cool that we can do it. It's amazing that we have this, but it's really draining.
I'm just always so tired, and I'm not as motivated as I would normally to do my schoolwork. And also, like, I'm inside all day doing my work, and it kind of just drains the energy out of me.
I've always just like been a person who like thrives off of other people. So even like only getting to go into school 2 days a week, even though that's becoming even a little bit dangerous, like I still want to be there because I still feel like that's a situation that I thrive in.
It's very different. Like when you're in school, when you're like in groups, like facing each other, I think it's like a better way to work together. And when you're online, it's so much more awkward, especially in like breakout rooms, because it's harder to get a conversation going.
I just miss all those like random people that you don't really like, you wouldn't hang out with outside of school, but like you're like friends inside of school. Like I feel like I miss those people the most.
I think one of the biggest problems with teachers in virtual learning is that they tend to pay more attention to the kids in class, which is normal, but definitely puts the virtual people at a disadvantage.
Teaching virtually and in person is like having like a dinner party on fine china with like a fancy thing in your house, in your dining room, while also simultaneously running a barbecue in your backyard. But like none of the people can talk to each other. Some people show up late and need all of the first courses even though you're already on desserts, and you can only be in one place at once, right? So you're forced to divide your time between dinner party and the barbecue in the backyard.
I find myself frequently, forgetting that the other people exist. So I'll be teaching virtually and I'll remember that I have students in the room. So I'll do a lot of like talking to the screen, talking to the students and going back and forth.
And like when teachers are like sharing a screen or whatever, they can't see you. So they can't see me raise my hand. So I'm just gonna have to like randomly unmute and speak. Like I kind of feel like left out almost, because sometimes it feels like the virtual kids are kind of just like interrupting what goes on in the classrooms.
I mean, as good as of a teacher and educator as you are, it really is kind of giving split attention to kids who are in class and kids who are home. So it's tough to kind of make sure you are always on the ball, making sure everyone's doing the right thing, everyone's in attendance and being taken care of.
We're putting forth a great effort in making it as close to a meaningful experience as we can. And I think that everybody's going to learn from this, and I think everyone is going to be stronger because of this. But I think the hardest part is that this isn't necessarily the job that I or any other teachers signed up for so many years ago. It's just different. And I think that that's really, really tough for me personally, as I do take a lot of pride in and joy in my job.
Building a classroom culture is difficult when not everybody's in the room, because essentially every time we get a new group of students in the classroom, it's like a different class. It's a different group dynamic in the room. It's a different group dynamic online.
I think I had a lot of friends who were in cohort A, but I'm in cohort B, so I end up not seeing them at all, and I miss their presence. I miss being around them.
I miss having those 25, 30 kids in school and seeing their faces every morning. And I have bad days, and most of the times my students are picking me up, or they'll say something funny, or we'll talk about stuff, and kind of makes my day. So it's tough, really tough not seeing them. But
I want my students to have some sort of emotional engagement with the material. And it's really difficult to do that virtually. I mean, think about any time you've been interviewed or you talk to somebody online. It's difficult to have that kind of the same emotion that you would get if you're hanging out in person.
When students were in front of us and doing practice problems, we could walk around and look over their shoulder and see what their work looks like and know whether they're struggling or not. Now, a student's at home doing work on their notebook at their desk, and we can't see that. We can't know whether our students have questions or not. And it's tough for students learning brand new material to know if they have questions or not. I think the biggest complication is really knowing whether our students are getting it, whether it's clicking.
The hardest thing is getting students to participate in class. It's essentially like, playing Dora the Explorer, where, I ask a question, then everybody just stares at me until I answer it for myself 5 seconds later. You're like, oh, what day is it today? Yes, it's Tuesday. Like that it's just ridiculous.
It's a lot easier for me and others to ask the teacher and your peers questions while you're in school, because you can discuss what you're confused on and ask for help.
I really miss that in-person connection that I get in a classroom where, we're having a great discussion and the question or the conversation's just popping and everybody's really involved in it and it's just bubbly.
I think I miss the social interactions the most with my students. I would consider myself to be a very dynamic teacher. I like to get up and move around. I like to jump around the room, ask questions, chat with students about their days. And I really enjoy connecting what we're learning with what they experience in their lives. But it's really hard to have those face-to-face moments and to have that relationship when there's a screen between us.
It's just a lot more lonely when you're at home on your computer, and you have more fun while you're in school.
Teachers like get to know people better in person. Like there have been so many times where teachers have like joked around with their students or whatever, and you can tell when they like a person, but it's so hard to get to know someone like through a screen, so you don't have that kind of like trust. Obviously you can't like tell who I am from like a 50-minute Zoom call. Like
obstacles in completing my work haven't necessarily been too much technological, but more, I would say, motivational, just because I'm sitting in front of the computer all day and don't want to keep doing work.
Online, it comes with like a lot of distractions and a lot of temptations with like your phone and whatever you're surrounded by.
Like there's some days where I'm like, do I sit at my desk, just in my bed?
I do feel like I look at a computer for too long during virtual school, because even though the school day is a lot shorter, everything now is online because we don't have any paper copies really. So sometimes it does give me a headache, or it makes me more tired than I usually would by just staring at the screen.
Virtual learning makes it very difficult, and there are a lot of students that are struggling with staying on top of their work, staying organized, and I don't blame them. You know, it's hard to be on your computer all day. You're in class all morning on the computer. Then if you have lab, you're back on the computer in the afternoon. And then on top of that, you have all of your homework that you're doing on the computer. So it is a lot of screen time, and it's a long day.
The hardest part of this whole coronavirus is not knowing when it's going to end. It's almost been a whole year and we still don't really know where it's going. Some people thought it was going to be done after the 2 weeks when we first got closed down, and then others thought it wouldn't even make it till after the summer, but here we are still wearing masks and still having cases go up, and it's just hard to keep going when you have no clue when it's going to end.
Technical problems also became the norm for many students and teachers, as a trip to IT became part of many's daily routine.
I think our situation is complicated by the fact that the internet in Montville is not always completely reliable. You know, we've had little glitches with Schoology or ClassLink. Those things are bigger than just us. So those aren't things that we actually have direct control over.
It stinks when you have a classroom full of 8 kids and then you have 12 of them at home and my computer dies or the Wi-Fi cuts out. In situations where traditionally we would think on our feet as teachers and do a different activity in the room, now I have to do the different activity in the room while troubleshooting the students at home. So it's definitely cut into instructional time and the time that we have to do meaningful activities with our students.
During like a science quiz, like it just kept going in and out, and it was just very difficult.
It's a lot harder to get into contact with teachers when you're not in school. So like if I'm having like trouble with something and they don't necessarily like see my email, or something like my Wi-Fi goes out, like it's a lot harder to get my work done because it's so like out of your control. Like especially with me, like my Wi-Fi sucks, and there have been so many times where I've been like late to class or like got kicked out of a meeting, and all of my teachers have been super understanding about it.
My teachers have been understanding towards network and Wi-Fi issues. It definitely is a positive in all of this.
I'd have to say, like 9 times out of 10, it happens on a Wednesday when everybody's virtual. And it's just like, not today. You know, to everybody's credit, the fact that getting on and participating in school is so important to them, I guess that means a lot to me. That, you know, people are not saying, well, I can't get on, you know, I don't really care. They do care. And I think that's what makes it even more frustrating when we encounter those problems and folks, you know, can't get the access that they need.
Our world is so technology focused that I think we need to learn to unplug. Before we had to learn how to plug in and learn all the technology and all those little things. Now it's the opposite. Now we got to learn to detach ourselves from technology and be rooted in the physical world again. And I think that's going to be the hardest thing going back from from COVID. And I hope people learn that.
Fall sports were on many minds as the 2020 season approached.
As all fall sports are outdoors, they found easy ways to start their seasons up and keep them going into November.
Like all things, they were modified to keep the community safe. Some major changes included setting a limit to the amount of fans allowed to attend any given game. Fans also were distanced and required to wear masks while attending the games. The athletes also had shortened schedules and limited use of some facilities to deal with.
My lacrosse season was canceled last spring, and my volleyball season has been postponed for a while now. And that's really hard because sports are a big part of my life, and seeing my friends on those sport teams were really fun. I have a lot of memories from that.
I'm not gonna worry about something that I can't change. Like, if we're gonna have a season, we're gonna have a season, and if we're not, we're not. There's nothing really I can do individually, so.
I feel bad because I do like to try to come out and support sports, and that even for me was frustrating because I couldn't do it the way I always do.
I think Mr. G did a really great job and did everything he had to do in order for us to have a season, and we were lucky to have anything because a lot of the fall sports and other towns had to cancel. So
from the beginning of the summer sessions, our coaches and student athletes were required to screen daily. This consisted of taking temperatures and filling out a daily questionnaire. In addition, coaches grouped athletes into smaller cohorts and gradually increased those numbers in order to protect the larger group from possible exposure and/or spread. Students utilized their own water. They shared limited equipment. They wore face coverings at all times when not engaged in aerobic activity and practiced safe social distancing. And this was actually consistent throughout the whole fall 2020 season. As an athletic department, we were able to space our programs out around campus, all different levels, and stagger practice times. This enabled us to successfully navigate the fall season, from July 15th all the way through Wednesday, November 25th, when we finished with our green and white football game. I was very pleased that we were able to get in a full, uninterrupted fall season, and we really could not have done it without the support of the administration, parents, coaches, and the greater Montville community.
So there was no locker rooms. You just showed up with your masks. You had to walk all the way down to the field with your masks. We usually did our warm-up lap in our masks, and then we got to take them off once we started playing. But on the buses, you only got to have one person in each seat, and you all had to wear masks.
We weren't allowed in the locker room. We weren't allowed in the weight room. Our coaches did a really good job of trying to give us the most normal experience we had. We had team dinners up by the pavilion, by the amphitheater.
Players had to wear the masks entering the field, leaving the field. Coaches had to wear the mask on the sideline during practices, during games. There was no handshakes with opposing teams after the games. There was no water provided. All the equipment was sanitized. So there's a lot of moving parts in terms of how to keep safe and how to keep the season alive.
I think some of the protocols are very necessary in order for us to have the sport, and some don't really make sense. Like, for example, we have practice together, we take off our masks while we're playing, and then when we go on the field, all the girls on the bench have to have a mask on. That doesn't really make sense to me. And then also for basketball, the new rule is there's no tip ball because you're too close together, but you're next to each other the whole game. So I think those are unnecessary and don't really make sense, but if it's what has to be done for us to have a season, I don't really care.
I do feel safe with the protocols that were put in place. Having those protocols in a sport, especially like football, where guys are usually close together all the time, definitely help us out.
Sports teams did indeed incorporate a virtual aspect throughout the year. Many of our teams incorporated Zoom calls, Google Meets, Hangouts, and within those gatherings, they would run film sessions. They would conduct fitness workouts, and they would also game plan. Precision sports performance with Coach Taquino's assistance helped tremendously. He was able to work out with a variety of athletes and provide them with much needed workouts. We will continue to implement the same safe practices to protect our coaches and students. And in addition, we'll keep up to date on the current literature and Department of Health guidelines to ensure that we're doing everything we can in order to have a full season.
It was actually surprisingly, it seemed like they were more motivated this year as compared to years past, because I think they realized how fortunate they were to be on the field. We were not sure what was going to happen day to day, so the attitude. They were never like, oh, we have practice today, or we got to travel to West Morris all the way out. They were ready to go every day, and the motivation was higher than ever, I think.
For our kids and coaches, not to know what the future holds is extremely difficult.
All the extra stuff that's been added this year with the protocols and the season being, kind of up in the air and kind of going into each week not knowing if it was going to be your last game. So I think there was definitely added stress in terms of that.
These seniors, you step on the field and you really don't know if it's going to be your last game or not. They're all kind of like, well, is this going to happen? When is it going to happen? How is it going to look? What is it going to be like? So the uncertainty for definitely seniors, but everyone, I can't imagine how tough that is.
I think our coaches and student athletes did an outstanding job pushing one another, knowing that each game could have been their last.
We were all very excited to have a season. We just didn't know what we were playing for a while.
We did not have a similar student fan base, which I know a lot of the kids felt, and they were sorely missed, but we're really looking forward to hopefully getting them back at some point.
I think in the beginning, because there was a lot up in the air, a lot of guys didn't know whether or not we were going to actually have a season, and if we were, what it was going to look like. So I think a lot of guys going into it weren't as motivated. It didn't feel as normal as it was, but I think when we got the whole team together and actually started practicing, everyone picked up right where they left off, and it was normal from there.
Quarantine actually benefited me a lot because I had the chance to individually work on myself. Like I literally worked out 3 times a day, every day, because I was so bored. There was no restrictions on going outside and going for a run, so I went on a lot of runs. My stamina went up.
The pandemic has given me honestly a lot of opportunities to practice more, and I've taken that, and I do think I got better because of this.
Sports kind of kept us regimented, and like online school, you could kind of take it or leave it, but having to go to practice every day kind of kept you on a routine. So I think it benefited us positively in that way.
It's just like an escape from everything going on right now.
A lot of these students use this as an outlet, and when that outlet doesn't come, it's kind of frustrating, I'm sure. But
I think a lot of guys appreciated the sport and the team and high school sports in general a lot more. Because you go from, losing a season back in the spring to maybe not having a season in the fall, and it just makes you appreciate it that much more. So I think that's one positive that came from it.
In addition to this, pretty much every club offered at MTHS moved their operations entirely online. The Drama Club, for example, held their fall play through a ticketed Zoom call in December.
The music department has been taking a lot of protocols to make sure their students are safe, so we're no longer allowed to share our music, our stands, our instruments, and also the seats in the rooms themselves are set much further apart.
So in the past, for example, people would share stands. Now everyone's 6 feet apart in the classroom. And also we can't share the school instruments like we used to. People forget stuff once in a while, but now we can't really offer that in fear of, one person touching it and sharing something to someone else.
I have chairs. They're each spread 6 to 8 feet apart. I can fit 15 comfortably, safely in there, keeping in line those guidelines and protocols. The students are fully masked. I'm fully masked. I've added a personal amplifier system to my outfit every day. I joke that I look like a Zumba instructor or some type of other fitness coach or a motivational speaker.
One of the things that we have to have are special masks for a lot of the students. And we also have to have these things called bell covers, which are a specific kind of mesh elastic that goes over the end of the bell. And all these things kind of help prevent extra aerosols from coming out from playing.
The musicians are separated, so our coordination and teamwork is broken.
It's definitely been a challenge, but it's one that the kids are rising to, and they are following every guideline, every safety precaution that I have put in place in the classroom, because they want to be there, right? They want to be there, they want to continue making the music, and the kids are doing a great job with all of that.
Singing and, playing instruments in the band has a lot to do with, using your voice and using your mouth and your breath. And that's, a big issue with the virus. So it's definitely important that we're, following these protocols, like sitting far apart, not sharing things, just to ensure the safety of our students.
We don't know exactly what's going to happen this year. We don't know how the events are going to play out. And it's almost in a sense like, then what are we doing this for? Like, what if my efforts don't even go into anything?
And then there's also that aspect of, we're not going to be having a real concert. And I know for a lot of seniors, that's something that we look forward to every year.
I think since quarantine has started, it's kind of taken a toll on the music classes dynamic. So the great thing about music classes before was that you got to have like a lot of musicians. They can come together and create music based on what they hear off of one each other, and they can like echo off what they hear. But it's a little bit difficult to do that now that so many students are virtual. Like if you're virtual, you're not exactly hearing what the other students are playing because majority of the time they'll be muted, and it's kind of hard to replicate the same setting you would feel in a music class.
We only have about 20 minutes of actual singing or performing that we can do in the classroom in terms of rate of air exchange, and just the nature of what we're doing is such a more common spreader of COVID, unfortunately. So if we're in a 55-minute period and can only sing for 20, what do we do for the rest of it?
Rehearsing the way we have been, with some people in class and some people at home, has definitely been challenging. There are a lot of small cues that people pick up that we don't even really think about when we're trying to learn music together. I mean, something as simple as someone turning their page next to you, or, you know, they're kind of sitting and waiting to play, and then suddenly they get ready, you go, oh, they're getting ready, I guess I should get ready. There's all these little things that happen that suddenly we don't have anymore. And so it takes us a lot longer to learn our parts.
So I know for Orchestra, Mr. Havington usually sets up a Google Meet, and the students in the Meet, they're the virtual ones, so they mute themselves during class, but they can still hear the people who are in person and play along. So during class, they record their playing, and then at the end of class, they get to submit the recordings to a Google Drive where Mr. Havington listens to them later. Now, it isn't quite the same as playing together as a class, but at least he gets an idea of where each student is at and if they need more help or anything.
So I have to listen to all the recordings of the students from every single class, which is about 40 some minutes of music. And then I try to use that in their lessons to try to focus on different parts of music that need to be improved. And then I try to use that towards our concert.
This year for our concerts, since we can't have a traditional in-person concert, we had to do things a little differently. So what I've decided to do is give all the students click tracks, that's a metronome going and a video of me conducting, and they play their own part, pretty much recording by themselves, then send me the audio, and I compile it into the concert.
It's tough during this hybrid situation and just remote learning in general, because all of the elements of playing together and singing together have been taken away. So nothing compares to a live performance by any means, but we're still giving the students an opportunity to show all the hard work that they've been doing since September.
Having a choir class is something that I looked forward to in my schedule. I've been taking it since I was a freshman, and it was like the class I looked forward to every day, and it was a break in my schedule filled with honors and AP classes. And even virtually, I think that's something I look forward to. But sometimes it does feel like a chore going to class and having to sing to, a computer screen. But I still enjoy, taking the class, and I have no regrets over that.
So I still have almost 100 kids in choir, and they knew the setup was going to be different this year. They knew it was going to be challenging, but they were ready and willing to kind of try new things with me, which I thought was great.
The nice thing about music classes is that pretty much everyone wants to be there. Not only is it an elective, but you're performing and you're making music with everyone around you. So it's a fun experience, even if you have to work and you have to practice.
I think a lot of people use music as a way to, de-stress, and it's like, if you're gonna go watch a movie, you do that to have fun. You play your instrument because you enjoy playing that instrument.
It was that class where it was like a stress reliever. It was a break from all my other hard classes. And especially since my teacher, Mr. Havington, he's a very dynamic guy and he's very humorous. So having that kind of personality really just made me laugh. And I still get that once a week since I'm doing the hybrid schedule. But like when I'm online, I feel like I don't get that presence as much. You know what I'm saying?
The students' motivation is definitely down. Students who feel like they're performing well, they're the ones who are the most motivated. But students who are not as strong of a player, you can tell they're not as motivated to practice. They're not as motivated to be there. I understand. I mean, if you're hearing your violin and it's not sounding in tune and no one's tuning it for you, of course you're frustrated. That's no one's fault. That's not their fault. But we just have to try to make the best of it together.
The hardest part right now is just not knowing exactly what's going to happen next, because the whole COVID situation, it just changes every day and it changes rapidly. So who knows, we might even end up all virtual next week. We got to plan for all different things. We got to take everything into account, all these different situations. But it's kind of hard to do that when so many different things could happen.
So if right now, if you are involved in music in any way, if you're writing or you're playing or you're practicing, or I mean, even if you just love listening to it, just keep at it. Because while right now it's a big pain, it's going to end at some point. And it won't be that long, I think. And if there's one thing we know, we all need music in our lives, right? So who's that going to come from? It's going to come from the people making the music.
Clubs with larger events had to work hard to keep their events running by thinking of innovative solutions.
SAC's goal in all the events that we plan are to kind of buffer that stress that we might feel in school and to create a better environment for everyone. And it's not beneficial that we can't have these events, especially with the added stress that school has become.
You know, we're all in this together, and I think it's something that we all trying to get through. And so we're trying to make the best of what we have. And I think this community and this school is something that's really important to a lot of people. And that's just something we're just trying to show.
So we tried to propose some socially distant or virtual events, and those kind of got shut down a bit. And we tried to have that virtual or hybrid Spirit Week in the fall where we had the 5 different themed days. I know it was definitely difficult for everyone to participate.
I think the biggest part is just making sure everyone can take part in the activities that we're presenting. So in this situation, obviously we don't want to have anything in person. That way the people that are virtual don't feel left out, and we're also not, putting the health of our students at risk.
As SAC, not only are we trying to plan events, but I would also like to think that we are setting somewhat of an example and standard for the rest of the school. And I don't want to be the group that is messing it up and creating issues, and no one wants to be. So I think that keeping the rules in place and following the rules to the T, we're not trying to pull one over on everyone else. We're doing everything we can the safest way possible. And when we are to have in-person events, I think providing social distancing, PPE, that type of thing is going to be crucial if we were to plan that.
As fall progressed, the hybrid school system became the norm for many students. Teachers and students alike shared some growing pains in figuring out the most effective way to learn through a computer screen.
If I could give any student advice, it would be very simply ask questions. No teacher is going to be upset with you asking a question. In fact, they're going to be more upset if you don't ask a question. I want to talk to you about it. Your other teachers want to talk to you about it. So ask questions. That's the biggest piece of advice.
Teachers have tried their best to make learning as normal and easy for us to get the best out of it.
Teaching is very simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. Basically, what you have to do is do your 100% best effort as a teacher every day and care about your students. And we are incredibly lucky to be in an environment with faculty that do that pretty much every day.
All of my teachers in general are super organized but Schoology, and a lot of them have made it easier to be available for extra help, and I think that's super helpful. And they've also listed resources and stuff.
I know myself, I've adjusted my expectations for how long things will take. I've adjusted my expectations for participation. And I've kind of come up with a little more creative ways to have participation. Frequently, I'll start with an icebreaker or conversation to get everybody to unmute themselves. And kudos to my students. A lot of my students have really kind of risen to the challenge of unmuting and saying things and asking questions and being able to interact.
I think it's just shifted a little bit in regards to putting more ownership and responsibility on the individual.
Because of the way that things are set up, there's a lot more onus put on the student to get work done, which isn't necessarily fair or right, but we all have to do what we can do in this given time. It depends on how independent the students are. And I've done a lot of work in trying to help students who maybe aren't as independent be independent so that they can make those adjustments.
Keeping organized, keeping a list, keeping a calendar, whatever it is that works best for you, so you could plan ahead, start crossing some items off the list that you've completed, will help make it seem a little less overwhelming and help keep you organized.
Something that's helped me stay super organized during all of this is to keep a planner. I keep it with me during my classes, and I'll write all my deadlines and stuff for college in that too, so that's helpful.
We've adjusted, and I think the students have started to adjust as well. You know, we're using presenting on Google Meets and screen share, so that way we can really see what you're doing on your end and walk through it that way. So we've used technology in like the best way to kind of help fight through the difficult time we're in right now.
With all the problems that the MTHS community has come to face, the maintenance of everyone's mental health became a priority.
Mindfulness in general as a movement within the district started maybe 4 years ago, where we had done a climate and culture survey, and it was very shocking to me to see the level of stress and anxiety that students exhibited, and it was from kindergarten all the way up to high school students. So across all the grade levels, folks have done a really good job in individual schools of finding ways, whether it's a mindfulness break or doing yoga in gym class, teaching students the basics of doing meditation, or even just, deep breathing. I think those kinds of skills will be helpful throughout your life, because we can't escape stress. It's always there. It's just finding a way to cope with it so that it doesn't overwhelm you. We really feel that it's critically important that it's okay not to be okay. And if students are feeling that way, that they need to reach out. We have our counselors, our SACs, even teachers. No one should be struggling alone. If they're feeling down, if they're feeling depressed.
Your home, which used to be kind of a place for you to relax, has now become your classroom. It's easy to get overwhelmed and feel like you've been sitting in the same place all day and you haven't done anything.
Well, one of the things I'm most worried about for students is that a lot of them don't have hobbies. And what I mean by that is a lot of people spend their time watching Netflix, scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, and Snapchatting people. The first piece of advice I have is just limiting time on digital devices. I think that's definitely a big one.
You've got to prioritize your health. Your mental health is just as important as your physical health, but your physical health has a good impact on your mental health. So making sure you're eating well, making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure you're getting up and just doing something to move. It's easy to stay at home and want to sit on the couch or lay in bed. Like, just getting some sort of physical movement in your body will make an impact.
Just get out of bed in the morning. Like, even if you're a virtual student, get out of bed, keep a routine, go sit at a desk somewhere. That's definitely by far the best thing, the simplest thing that you can do to make your life a lot better.
I don't think anyone is in a normal place. No one's in a fully healthy place right now. And you're going to make mistakes, and you're not going to be your best all the time. Sometimes it's better to be honest with your teachers and reach out, and then they can help you. That's really what a teacher should be there for, not only to educate, but to help you. They're here for a reason.
As the second marking period began in November, COVID cases surged in New Jersey and across America. The district made the decision to have the last week before winter break and the first 2 weeks after all virtual.
This was done to protect those students coming into the building from a potential outbreak in the school.
The better that we do now in controlling the virus within our town, the better odds we have at being able to do something more towards the end of the year. So I would say it's just a matter of doing the right thing and being hopeful.
We're pushing forward in a positive direction. When we come out of this, we'll feel a whole lot better.
Yeah. I'm kind of in awe of the high school students, because I think they are doing their absolute best to remain positive. And that would be, my best advice is, as miserable as it can be and as frustrating as it can be, to not let it get the best of you.
And focusing on the things you can control. Obviously, the pandemic is stressful for everyone, and it's beyond everyone's control. All we can do is the things that they recommend, and that's really it. You don't have a lot of control in this situation, which is really hard.
One of the biggest positives that I've seen come from this is that students really have started to appreciate and be thankful for what they have. And I think if nothing else comes of this, positive, I think that alone can be worth it. Being thankful for health and family and safety and friends, but also the opportunity you have. You guys get to come to school every day. There are so many people all over the world who are your age, who have to go to work, who have to struggle through things like that are a lot harder than what we get to do every day.
My father lives alone. Under normal circumstances, I get to see him a fair amount, but when COVID happened, when school closed and everybody went to lockdown, my opportunities to see him were greatly reduced. When we did get together finally during this lockdown and we're sitting out on our front lawn, socially distanced, just trying to have a way to see each other and talk to each other in person, he shared with me some reflective thoughts about what we were experiencing. What he pointed out was I was getting to do things that he never got to do with me. You're getting to spend so many more hours with your closest family than you normally do. And take advantage of that, appreciate that despite what's going on in the world, you do have that positive, you get to be closer to your loved ones more frequently. Maybe a high school student would just retreat into their own bedroom and kind of keep to themselves, but get to know your parents, get to know your siblings, even more than you think you already do, because what we're going through right now, hopefully is never going to happen again, right? Hopefully we never experience this again. So make the most of it. Take advantage of the positive that it can offer, even though there's so much negative going on.
Like, care about other people, put their needs above your own. Try and help people out when you can, go above and beyond. Those are the kinds of things that you need to be worrying about. You can't worry about things you can't control. There's nothing you can do about it. So why would you worry about it? Right? So focus on the things you can control, like caring about other people and giving your 100% best effort.
I still feel very strongly that, folks who do the right things, and they're not hard to do, social distance, wearing a mask, and, frequent hand washing. I think if folks are doing that, I really do think we'll be in a good spot.
As the second semester progresses, so does our journey to normalcy. Vaccinations are being administered to susceptible individuals, as well as the number of cases in Montville dropping drastically. Montville recently made the decision to eliminate virtual Wednesdays, giving students the chance to spend more time in the classroom. As we work towards getting everyone in school together, many people have stepped up to help those who need it most, even if they themselves were in a tough situation. Remember, we're all in this together, and we would not be where we are now without the dedication and cooperation of the entire Montville community. Thanks for watching.
And remember to keep doing your part, not only by wearing your mask, staying socially distant,
but internally, by appreciating what you have, showing kindness even in moments you may not want to, and persevering through hardships as life goes on.